Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in. We're going to give people a few minutes to log in. And before we get started today, we're going to do something slightly different. We are going to do a poll to just check in with you. We spend a lot of time thinking about topics that are timely and important in the world of career management, and we want to make sure we're addressing your needs and desires. And so with that, we are going to launch our poll before we get started. And I don't know if you're there. Okay, so there is the poll. So the question for today is, what is the number one thing you would like to walk away with from the presentation today? Is it job search process information, tools to manage my mindset, or tips on how to build compassion and self-care? So I'm going to just give you a couple of minutes since people are still coming in, and I am going to take notes just so I can make sure I'm addressing what you would like to do today. And I think that we will cover all of these things today, so hopefully it will be helpful to you. Okay. All right, so I am going to just give it a couple of more seconds before I end the poll. All right, I think we can end the poll. And so I don't know if you can see the results, but most of you are here to get tools to manage your mindset. So I think we're in alignment because that is the content of this webinar. So thank you so much for sharing your input. So with that, we will get started, and I welcome you again to our fourth webinar of the semester of the year. And the webinar today is Thrive While You Hustle, Mastering Your Job Search Mindset. So I welcome you, and my name is Elizabeth Senna. I am a career coach here at the CDO, and we're so happy to have you here. Like in other webinars before, we will be going through the presentation today and hold questions for the end. So the Q&A function will be opened at the end of my presentation, and I urge you to please hold your questions. Please, we want this to be a robust discussion, so please send them in when that Q&A is open. So with that, let's get started. So today we're going to talk about the job search journey. What does that entail in the context of your mindset? I mean, we are talking mostly about mindset today, but it's important to always level set and give context as to, you know, what we're focusing on mindset, but in what context? And today is in the context of your job search journey. And then, of course, what do we mean when we say hustle? We'll spend a little bit of time talking about what that means. And then, of course, most of this webinar will be on how to cultivate a healthy mindset. And then we'll move into takeaways, wrap up, and then we'll do our Q&A. So this is a familiar process for all of you, whether you've done your first job search or you're doing your 15th job search. The process has not changed that much over the decades. Perhaps the tools that we use have changed, the technology we use and companies use have changed to do a lot more parsing, to do more screening. We're now using, everything is digital, most of it is digital, so that has changed, but the journey itself has not. And the journey always starts in a job search with you. It starts with a self-assessment of who you are. If you're early in your career, or even if you're mid-career, if you're later in your career, it is important at the beginning of that job search to just do a self-assessment. What are my skills? What are my strengths? What are my abilities? You know, what jobs have I enjoyed? What have I enjoyed about them? And if you've had roles where you haven't enjoyed certain elements of the job, then what haven't I enjoyed? This process, the beginning of that process of self-assessment, really lays out the foundation for the rest of the journey. So it's really important upfront to do that work, to do that self-analysis and that self-assessment. And of course, then after you've done that hard work, because sometimes it comes really easy to us, but sometimes it takes a little more effort, we move into preparation. And here are really the mechanics of a job search. So working on your resume, making sure it's articulate, it's clear, it's concise, working on cover letters, your LinkedIn profile, making sure that your about section summarizes your key strengths, working on your target list, who will you reach out to? And of course, the job search strategy. The job search strategy includes everything from the types of roles you might be targeting. Maybe there are sectors that you're interested in, or companies within sectors that you're very interested in. So that starts forming your target list. Then, of course, it's who will I reach out to in terms of my network, my colleagues, my friends, my former employers, my alumni from my schools. And then you move on to the next part of that journey, which is, of course, connecting. You start reaching out and making connections, doing outreach, having conversations. And those conversations are helpful in many regards. They're not only for finding that one role, but it's also about educating yourself about what's happening in the market. What is happening in the industries I'm interested in, what's happening in companies and sectors. Maybe there are 10 companies you're interested in, and you're going to do some networking to just understand, how is the company doing? What are they doing? Where are they growing? It could be that you have a target company on your list, but that target company, through your networking, you find out are on a hiring freeze. So this is the part of connecting and getting a lot of information, which then you will use to start doing your outreach and applying. And applying also there's a lot of mechanics to it. You are applying through job boards, you're using LinkedIn. Depending on the level of your career, you might be working through recruiters. So there's a lot of nuts and bolts that go into this job search. And hopefully you'll move on to interviews. And of course, that's complex as well, because we have all types of interviews these days. We have your normal behavioral-based interviews, but then you also have technical interviews, case interviews, multiple layers of interviews, on-site, virtual, and hopefully you get to an offer. And one of the things I want to say about this journey is that even though it looks linear on paper, it is anything but linear. Oftentimes we will have to iterate, we will have to recalibrate, we will have to repeat the process depending on the feedback of the market and the things that you're finding, both about the market, about the roles that you're applying for, and of course yourself. So these are the personal things that you have to work on in your job search. And at the same time, there are things and factors that you can't control. So those are things that are external to you, like competition. Are you trying to get into an industry that maybe there's a lot of demand for those roles, but not enough supply? So that's a good equation to be in. Or you could be targeting an industry where there's an oversupply of people and not enough jobs. So those also determine your job search journey. And then, of course, we have to contend with just evolving industry changes, the various processes that companies have in terms of their recruitment process. And we all know that some companies do this extremely well. They have a very buttoned up process. And then there are companies that have a horrible process and a candidate experience. Those all impact our job search journey. So those are the mechanics of the job search journey. Then we move into what we mean by the hustle. So as you are going through this job search, there's a lot of effort and persistence required, because the job search process can take 3 months, it can take 6 months, it can take longer than that, really depending on the job market. And as most of you know, we have had an unusual job market the last 2 years. We had layoffs, we've had repositioning, reframing, we've had a lot of companies tighten and pull back. That all impacts our ability and the timeline of our job search. So persistence and effort. And that is what we mean by hustle, that we take initiative. We are proactive. We're not waiting for opportunities to come to us. We use our persistence to go out and get what we want, initiate conversations, apply for jobs. We continue despite setbacks. There will be setbacks during the job search, I can guarantee you. You may have feedback you receive that what is not stellar. You might be targeting a company that you are really, it's on the top of your list, but they're not hiring people. So it will require for you to continue and use that persistence to go on. And of course, leveraging all available resources to you. Do you know what those resources are? Are you really maximizing the resources that are available to you? That requires hustle. And of course, adapting. The markets change, the processes are changed. That requires a lot of nimbleness, a lot of flexibility from your end. And sometimes I like to think of it of boxing, that a boxer is constantly moving his body to avoid being hit. Well, it's that kind of bending and flexibility we need as we hustle for that new role. So with that, those are the mechanics of a job search. And those are tactical, operational things that require a lot of organization and structure. But underpinning all of that is really your attitude, your mindset. And we are going to spend the rest of the presentation really talking about how to cultivate your mindset so that it really fosters empowerment, that it fosters confidence, and that it fosters perseverance. So I'll start off with defining what a healthy mindset is, what it looks like. We're going to talk about your inner dialogue and how that promotes or demoralizes you. We'll talk a little bit about nurturing self-compassion and how that actually helps build a more resilient mindset, and then how to leverage your support networks to also help you build your healthy mindset. So what do we mean when we talk about mindset? What are the elements that go into a mindset, and what is that framework? Well, obviously, we've all grown up in different circumstances. We have had different experiences in our lives that shape our attitudes, it shapes our beliefs and our perspectives. It shapes actually how we react to circumstances and situations, whether we view a situation negatively, whether we bounce back. And these attitudes and having healthy and positive attitudes and beliefs helps us in handling rejection and unresponsiveness. So depending on where your mindset is, you will react differently to how you manage your self-doubt and frustration that you will experience during your job search. And it will also help you calibrate or recalibrate as you're going through the process and you face obstacles, you might hit a wall. I have a question. Oh, someone just had a question, and I will actually hold the question till the end if you don't mind. And someone just asked the question about appropriate follow-up. And I'm just going to write that question so that we can answer it later if you don't mind. So back to mindset and attitude and beliefs. We want to focus on this because it helps us manage some of the challenges that we'll go through in a job search. So let's start off with your inner dialogue. And this is really important as we think about fostering a healthy mindset. Because when we have a healthy mindset, it really is believing in our ability to learn and grow, approaching challenges with a sense of optimism and perseverance. And I talked at the beginning of when I was talking about a job search that you start with a self-assessment. And when you're talking about cultivating a healthy mindset, you want to start with self-awareness. You want to be mindful of how you are talking to yourself. What are the things that you tell yourself about yourself? We may get a lot of feedback from the external world. We may get feedback on our resumes. We may get feedback from our interviews. But the most important feedback is the feedback we give ourselves. Because depending on how we talk to ourselves, we will either build ourselves up or we will, demoralize and put ourselves down. So observing your thoughts, what are you saying to yourself? For example, when a negative thought arises, what has triggered it? What is contributing to it? And you can see on the slide that if you don't have disbelief in your abilities, to learn. There are certain things you might say to yourself. You might say, well, I'm really good at this, or I'm either good at it or I'm not. I'm going to give up because it's really hard and I won't try. Or you can say, I can learn anything that I want. I can learn anything I put my mind to. So I'm going to practice and I know that I can learn. You can get frustrated easily after the first try and say, okay, I reached out to this person. They haven't reached out to me. I reached out to them one time and I'm going to give up and not try again. Or you can say to yourself, well, maybe the person is busy and I am one of many people who has reached out to this person. Let me give the person some time and let me try again. So you see, how you speak to yourself and how you view the situations that come to you are so important, and the dialogue that you're having with yourself. For example, when you have feedback, when you catch yourself thinking negatively, are you able to challenge your thoughts? Are you able to challenge them with rational and compassionate responses? So let's say someone is, you got a rejection in the mail, or you went through a screen and you didn't do well on one of the questions. What are you saying to yourself? It's important to say, did I do my best? Oh, yes, I did my best. Okay, well, what can I learn from this experience? Can you challenge your thoughts with assumptions or facts? Is this an assumption? Is this thought I'm having an assumption, or is this actually a fact? So here we're really being self-aware of the things we say, of the things we are putting the attention to, and using our own mind to challenge ourselves, using our own experience to challenge those thoughts. And a positive mindset also helps you with reframing rejection, because rejection is part of the interview process. Rejection is part of the job search process. And especially in this market, I mean, as I said, it's a very difficult market, and we have maybe an oversupply of talent and not enough jobs. So rejection will be part of that process. And how can we redirect the information we're receiving? So let's say you have an interview and you didn't do well on your story. Okay, can you use that experience to redirect? I didn't tell my story so well. What can I do? Can I reach out to someone and practice my story? Do I need to write it down? Do I need to record myself? Do I need to practice it with a friend? Is there someone in my network with whom I can practice the story and just do it better next time? Is the company you're really in love with and want a dream job on a hiring freeze? Okay, this company is not hiring right now. Are their competitors hiring? Are there adjacent industries hiring? How can I reframe this no with turning it into a yes? And part of it, of course, is acknowledging your efforts. Oftentimes when we don't get the results we want, we dismiss all the effort that went to getting there. And I want to encourage you not to do that. The job search process is a marathon. It requires a lot of stamina. It requires that you put a lot of effort into it. All of the mechanics of the resume, your LinkedIn, writing cover letters, it's exhausting. I mean, if you apply for 20 jobs, that sometimes can be 20 cover letters. And even if one answer is no, it doesn't diminish or take away from the fact that you put in all that effort, that you spent hours on end writing cover letters and doing outreach. So it's really your mindset is important because it helps champion yourself. It helps you acknowledge yourself so that you can build more confidence, so that you're fostering the right behaviors. If you do the opposite, if you say, okay, well, this was terrible, I can't do well, I can't do things better, then you become paralyzed. And that is not what we want during your job search. We don't want you to get paralyzed. And so one way out of that paralysis is to just go back and look at your effort. What did I do? How many applications did I send? How much outreach have I done? Wow, I didn't realize I did 20 outreach. I reached out to 20 people. I wrote, 15 cover letters. Acknowledge your efforts. I think this is incredibly important. And then, of course, what wins have you had? Have I had some wins? Let me acknowledge those wins as well. Maybe you went to a networking event and you're an introvert. Well, you went to the event. Maybe you didn't speak to a lot of people, but you showed up, and that's also important. And how you speak to yourself and how you frame these things are important because it will help you to adapt and move forward. You won't get into this paralysis if you're beating yourself up. And the mindset is important because it feeds on itself. Once you start down the path of focusing on the negative, it's a feeding frenzy and it snowballs. So that's why it's important to look at your thoughts, confront them, and sometimes have a little argument with them, redirect them, reframe rejection so that you can adapt and move forward. And I want to talk here about self-compassion. I know it's a term that we throw around, and maybe it sounds a little bit of new agey, but there have been so many studies that talk about self-compassion and how it helps us become more resilient and adaptable. And so how do we do that? How do we build self-compassion? This ties in with the inner dialogue because it really is about overcoming your self-criticism. It's about really quieting that inner critic. We all have this inner critic. I mean, psychologists have been talking about it for decades now, about the conscious, the unconscious, the superconscious, the id, the ego, the superego. So it's there. It's constantly there, not just in a job search, but the way we live our lives. And we have to manage that inner critic so that it doesn't get in our way and sabotage us. And one of the ways of doing that is to just write down, what are some of my strengths? What are my skills? What do I do well? What have I done well? And when you've been in a job search for a while, this might not be an easy exercise. In fact, it might be really, really difficult for you to do. And so this is where it's good to talk to a friend. Ask people who are close to you, whom you trust, to tell you, well, when you think of me, what are my superpowers? What do you think I do really well? What do you think I do better than other people? And write those down, read them, remind yourself of that. And then think about it also from a friend. So let's say you are counseling, a friend comes to you for advice and says, I'm really struggling. I've been looking for a job for 8 months now. I just keep getting no's, and I'm awful. I don't really have any skills. I've lost all confidence in myself. What would you tell that friend? If you had that person sitting in front of you and they were struggling and having challenges, what would you say to them? And then use that conversation and talk to yourself that way. Talk to yourself with kindness. Champion yourself and motivate yourself like you would your friend. And then, of course, fostering self-belief. And this is really a great tool. I've used it myself in terms of keeping a journal of my small wins and how I've overcome obstacles. And it could be small things, maybe you really didn't want to reach out to someone in your network because you're intimidated. That person is really very senior and maybe they're incredibly busy and they don't have time to take your call, or at least that's what you're telling yourself. But you made it happen. You did the outreach, you were really scared, and you did the outreach anyway, and you reached out. So I would write that down. I went to a conference, I'm an introvert, and I went to a wine and cheese event held at, from the Small Business Administration, and I stayed there half hour instead of 10 minutes. I didn't run out of there. Or I got someone's card, and maybe you didn't use the card, but you got the card. Write that down. So keeping a journal, really keeping a focus on that inner critic, trying to really balance that inner critic with a balance of championing yourself and talking to yourself kindly, that will go a long way to building compassion. And that compassion will help you with your mindset. And so now I want to talk about the loneliness of a job search, because it is a lonely process, because it's you. You are applying for a job. It's not you and your friend and you and your colleagues. It's you, and it's what you bring to the table. And when we're doing a job search, it can feel like we are the only ones out there who are experiencing challenges. We're the only ones out there who are getting no's, or we're the only ones out there who maybe have hit walls. And the truth of the matter is that job search is challenging. And I don't want to minimize that. I don't want to pretend that it is easy and that anyone can do it. No, I mean, that's why we have thousands of coaches out there that do coaching, and we have the career development office, because it isn't easy. It's challenging. It takes a lot of grit and stamina to get through it. But this is where the power of your community is really, really important. And when I talk about community here, I'm talking about the larger community. I'm talking about your friends. I'm talking about your colleagues. I'm talking about the people that know you through sports, through hobbies, through volunteering, and really availing yourself of that community, because it will really help you overcome and help actually foster more positive thinking. So use your peer-to-peer networks. Maybe there's a couple of colleagues in your class who are also looking for a job. Maybe getting together, having coffee, and just sharing notes. Hey, this is what I'm seeing. Are you seeing the same thing? It helps you feel like, wow, I'm not alone, and this is not unusual. This is not abnormal. This is not out of the norm of what everyone else is experiencing. So leverage those networks to practice. Maybe you need to practice mock interviewing. Maybe you need to just go over your story with someone else, someone to listen to you. And also use these networks to also just as a safe place where you share your frustrations and your worries, because I don't want to, I don't want to minimize that there are worries and there are things that can be worrisome in the job search. I don't want to say that there aren't, because there are. But when you can leverage the power of your community, it will help you have more resilience. When you're home and isolated by yourself and not talking to anyone, it is easy to get pulled down into this darkness. And so this is really where, leveraging this network and community is extremely helpful. And here, of course, you have your Yale community, you might have your undergrad community, maybe you are part of a fraternity or of a sorority, maybe you do group exercise. Just think more broadly about community, and don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to have a conversation, and really leverage that power of that community. And I would say, of course, the Career Development Center is here, and this is an unlimited resource for you. If you haven't engaged with us, I would encourage you to. Sometimes we just need someone to tell us, yes, you're doing all the right things. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just a tough job market, or you're not doing anything wrong. It's just there's a oversupply of talent, or maybe you do need to do some tweaking into your resume, or maybe you do need to work on your story, but it's important to do it with someone else. And then here, I want to talk about self-care activities. When we think about mindset, we think about our emotions and our general attitudes and beliefs. But what goes into fostering your mindset is what you do with the basics. Are you eating right? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you exercising? Are you blocking out time so that you have some breaks and downtime between your job search? I would say this is extremely critical, to take breaks from job search. It's, like I said, it is a marathon, and if you don't take water breaks, when you're running, you've got to take water breaks. Even if you're still running, you still have to rehydrate and eat while you're doing that marathon. Well, it's the same thing with a job search. If you don't have the basics right, If you're not getting sleep, and if you're not eating well, and if you're not going out and seeing the sun, it's very difficult to be positive. When I'm overtired and hungry, it's much easier for me to get irritable. It's much easier for me to lose my patience. It's much harder for me to bounce back from things. So I urge you to also do the basics: the eating, exercise, sunlight, go out into the sun. Don't spend all day long doing job search. Go out, have coffee with someone, go do something absolutely not related to job search. So that brings us to the end. And so what I would say is our takeaways are the following. Remember to be aware of your dialogue. What dialogue are you having with yourself? What are you saying to yourself? Are your words promoting growth? Are your words motivating you, empowering you, or are they disempowering you? Be more self-aware. Try to observe your thoughts more so that you can understand yourself better and help yourself to reframe those thoughts. This positive mindset will also help you reframe rejection, help you redirect, calibrate, adapt. Practice self-compassion. Think about what you would do with a friend, and also treat yourself the same way you would treat a best friend. And then, of course, practice self-care, leverage the larger community, leverage the community that's next to you and even online, and of course, reach out to us. So at the end of all of this, what I would like to say is, if you take nothing away from today, please take care of your basic needs. Eat well, exercise, get enough sleep, and of course, also get some exercise, because that also releases great hormones that promote positivity and motivation. So if there's no other takeaway, I would say that, do that, and also please, self-awareness about your inner dialogue. So with that, we will open it to questions. Just again, I'm going to just do a plug for the CDO. There are some webinars that are available to you. I just did one last month on transferable skills. We did one also on the insider's view of hiring, the state of hiring for 2024, AI in your job search, and there are a plethora of other webinars, guides that are available to you. So now we will open it up for questions. I think I'm going to go back to the first question. So the first question was on the topic of hustle. How many times do you think it's appropriate to follow up with someone if you've had good chats with them and then they ghost you? It's a tough question, and a common question. So I would say 2 or 3 times. And then I would give it a break, maybe wait a few weeks. One of the things I like to suggest to people is, if there's an article or if there's a topic of interest to this person that you know from having had conversations with them, maybe find an article that you can send and say, hey, haven't heard from you. I saw this article that I thought you might find interesting, and and send it and see if you get a different reaction. So that's how I would handle that. The next question is, can you suggest how to find peer-to-peer networks, especially those that may be more targeted, rather than people of all skills levels who are job searching, located in the UK and have not found many? Okay, well, I would look at affinity groups, meaning, are there women leadership groups available to you? Sometimes the universities, your alumni university might have a way of navigating into them. They may be leadership institutes that have coaching. I actually found a tool recently where they do job search circles, where they're by affinity groups. I'll come back to you, Rebecca, and I will give you some suggestions. I'm just going to write your name down, but I would say, whether it's interest related, are there particular areas where you're interested? I would focus also on meetups. Meetups are an incredible thing to do, and they are all over the world. I would also avail myself of meetups. Is there a chamber of commerce? Are there local commerce communities or associations? Is there an association for the industry that you're in? Maybe reach out to them. Like I've had a lot of interest recently in chief of staffs. Well, there is a professional association for chief of staffs. Get involved. They might have events. This is a way to find peer-to-peer networks. Okay, let's see what other questions. How can an alumni best leverage the CDO and its resources? What is the best way to get in touch? Well, there are several ways. One of them is attending the things that we do live, which are these webinars. If you go to the CDO website and log in, you will see that there are all previously recorded webinars available to you, as well as resources, guides, templates. I mean, we have templates for resumes, LinkedIn profile. And then, of course, you have CMS. You have SOM Connect. So SOM Connect is a wonderful resource for you to know what events are happening. There's actually a women's circle, Rebecca. If you go on SOM Connect, there's a women's circle where they get together and talk about salient topics. So there's SOM Connect, I would say, is the CDO website. There's these webinars. There's CMS, where you can also see job listings. There's the alumni newsletter. There are many ways of getting involved. So I think I've answered all of your questions. Oh, no, there's more. Sorry about that. All right. Besides LinkedIn, what are the job search sites that are reputable to use for job search? It seems many job search sites use AI to respond and select candidates. Well, that's not completely accurate. I think that AI is still in early adoption in the recruitment industry. There are different websites depending on your industry. So I would focus, actually, if you go to the CDO website, we do have job boards listed by industry and sector. So that's one resource that you can use. For example, if you're looking on the sustainability side, there is a website called Reconsidered. If you're looking for product management roles, there's Lenny's newsletter. Lenny has a job board that is only for product managers. And there are other like them. And if you go to the CDO website, we do have job boards listed by industry and sector. No, so the next question is the SOM Connect app the best way to find alumni doing relevant work for networking? I would say it's not the only one. I would also look at LinkedIn. The Yale School of Management has a page on LinkedIn. If you go onto that page and toggle down to alumni, there is a search bar in that page. Use that search capability to find alumni. So I would use both tools, and they're great. You can cross-reference and actually get emails on one and maybe not on the other. All right, what is the next one? How can you position your experience? You have multiple skill set across more than one function, marketing and operations, marketing being dated. This is a very big question, and I would say this one definitely focus. As much as we want to sort of broaden, I think as you start having conversations, I think this is where you get a real value of networking. This is a great question to bring to a networking conversation. Here are my skill sets and experiences. What roles in your company, leverage these type of skills? What are some pathways to doing that? I would say narrow is better than broad when you're making career changes. And I would say, working with a one-on-one coach is helpful in that regard as well. Is CMS available to alumni? Parts of it is. Job postings are definitely you can get access to. What are the best practices for that assess part of the career search journey? There are tools that you can use to do that. I mean, you can work one-to-one with someone on identifying your strengths and weaknesses. I like to suggest to people to just go through your resume job by job and write down the things you've liked, the things you haven't liked. You have all your performance reviews from your old roles or your current role. I look at those as well and just write those down. And there are some, of course, some tools out there like the Clifton Strengths Finder is a wonderful tool to identify your strengths. And there are some tools like it out there, the Myers-Briggs. So there are some standardized assessment tools, but then there are some more qualitative tools you can use, which are more, having a conversation with a coach. All great questions. I hope that this webinar was helpful to you. Let me just see, I think one more question came in. Is there a value to reaching out after being rejected for a role in order to know what went well or identify areas of improvement? Yes, it's a difficult thing to do. And to be honest with you, it's less about the company not wanting to give you feedback and more around compliance. Unfortunately, most of these companies are overseen by the Department of Labor, and there are a lot of OFCCP compliance regulations that they have to follow. And so they're more apt not to give you feedback just because they're so concerned about people taking the feedback wrong and using it to cause trouble for them. So it's difficult. If you've developed a relationship with someone there that is willing to give you some feedback, then it may be worth a try, but don't take it personally if you don't get that feedback, because there are reasons and compliance reasons that people don't give you feedback. Well, that's all for now. Please join us next month. We have a webinar on May 16th, and the name of the webinar, sorry, I'll have to wait till I find it. I don't remember where I wrote it. Okay, so the next one is May 16th, and it's From Confusion to Clarity, Demystifying Keywords to Land That Dream Job. So we will be discussing what keywords are and what they're not, and how to embed them in your job search. So thank you, everyone, for a wonderful conversation. I loved your questions. Keep them coming. And please reach out for an appointment if you want to delve a little bit deeper into the topic we discussed today. And I think I have more questions. Let me see. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I will answer your questions. Please reach out to me for some of the questions that you've asked here, because they're really very specific. And I don't think that this is the right venue. So please reach out. I look forward to meeting you all and seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you.